Hi, this is Beaux Pilgrim, Beaux Knows Insurance, Read Insurance. I'm sitting here in downtown New Orleans, and down in the French Quarter you can see I'm in Jackson Square here right now, but talking to you about busting myths and about insurance myths that are out there. If you haven't seen the first video, this is going to be part 2. If you have not seen the first video, then go back and check out the other video. The link is right up here in the top left-hand corner. Make sure you check that out. And also, if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button every time you see one of these videos and you like it. What we're going to talk about today, let's get into it. We're going to talk about myth busting about insurance, because there's all kind of myths out there when it comes to insurance where people think different things about insurance and they just don't know. They just have been misinformed. Well, I'm going to help you to understand some of those things, like I always do. Make sure that you are able to make sound decisions about your insurance purchases, because hey, look, insurance is really expensive, right? And you need to know the things that you need to know, because there's things that you just don't know. Well, I'm going to try to help solve some of those mysteries for you. So let's talk about the very first mystery. The very first one is going to be, we're going to cover 5 today. Well, the very first one is about flood insurance. Flood insurance is only important if I live in a high-risk area. That's false. The reality is that all of the world is a flood zone. And just depending on where you live, it's either a higher or a lower flood zone. And the reality is that 20% of the flood claims that happen in high-risk zones. The rest of them happen in all the others. Those are non-high-risk zones. So the reality is that 80% of us that aren't buying it that live in other zones other than high-risk zones. We need to be buying it. Here's some things that also people think in relation to this myth about flood insurance. And one of those things is they say, well, if a flood happens in my area, the federal government's going to come in. They're going to step in and they're going to help us out. They did that with Katrina in New Orleans. Well, the reality is they didn't really, not to the extent that the news media was portraying. Also, a lot of people were just misinformed about that, about the different things that happened. The Red Cross did a lot of things. A lot of other things like the Samaritan's Purse did a lot of things. A lot of churches did a lot of things. But the federal government didn't. The federal government came in and gave loans. That's what happens even moving forward. A couple years later in Houston, there was a massive flood event where a hurricane came on shore and just stayed there for a couple of days and dropped, I think it was 20-something inches of rain. Well, 80% of the flood losses that were reported were denied. Why? All because of one reason. They did not have flood insurance. The other 20% of those flood losses that were reported as claims, they were paid, but it was because they had flood insurance. Now, the rest of the people, they were able to get a loan, not buy, but they were able to get a loan through the federal government, but they had to carry flood insurance after that. So look into buying flood insurance. It's not as expensive as you may think it is. Do consider that. Let's talk about myth number 2. Myth number 2 is people who are military active or also retired pay more for their insurance. Well, that's just not true. Matter of fact, many insurance companies want to reward you for your service, and they will give you a discount for that flooding, for that experience that you've had as being either active or past military. Usually the discounts are more higher for those people who are active in the military now, but there are opportunities for you there. But you certainly don't pay more. Myth number 3 is going to be an umbrella policy is just too expensive. But an umbrella policy, we've got another video about that if you'll search through my blog posts and the videos. Where we talk about an umbrella policy. An umbrella policy is a policy that goes over top. Remember, it goes over top of your other policies that you have. It's going to provide extra liability protection for you. The purpose of it is to protect your assets. If you think about your assets you have, a lot of people think, well, I don't have enough assets. I don't own enough to warrant me having a umbrella policy. Well, think about what you own. Let's think about your house as the biggest asset a lot of people have. Well, let's say that your house is worth a couple $100,000, right? Well, that's $200,000 that you have in assets, not to mention savings, IRA, vehicles, other things that you own inside of your house. But what if your house is worth more than that? $300,000, $400,000, $500,000? Well, your underlying policies are going to be anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000. This is going to be the maximum you can have under those. So you may want to consider buying an umbrella policy. They're very inexpensive, $500 or lower. A lot of times will get you $1, $2, or $3 million for coverage. So consider getting an umbrella policy. Well, what's the number 4 one? Number 4 is going to be, I am not responsible if I have someone trespassing on my property. Now you may be thinking about thieves or burglars and whatnot, and you'd have to look at whatever the state law is in regard to that. But what I'm thinking about more is something like you have an attractive nuisance. Well, what is that? Well, you have pets that look like somebody would want to pet them, or you have a trampoline, you have a swimming pool, you have a slide, you have equipment in your yard that would attract people to come and want to play with that. Well, that's an attractive nuisance. Well, there's lawsuits that happen all the time where a child comes into the property because of a trampoline, slide, swimming pool, and they get injured. There's a case in specifically where a child goes into a yard to go swimming, drowns, and then the homeowners are sued, and they can't use the trespassing as something that they can lean upon because it's an attractive nuisance, and their liability insurance did pay. The fifth thing is going to be auto insurance policies cover the equipment or stuff that's inside of it. Like if you got tools in there, your computer, clothes, or whatever else that is broken into and that stuff is stolen, that's going to be covered under your home policy. Well, that's not true. That coverage is going to follow your homeowner policy or your renters or your condo policy. That follows that, not the auto insurance. So, well, that's 5 different myths that we busted on this video. I hope those things help you and help you to understand more about your insurance and know where to go for the correct insurance. Hey, if you haven't had these sort of conversations with your agent, hey, maybe you need to find yourself a new agent. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up button that you like this video. And if you have any questions, hey, make sure you ask those questions in the comment section. I'll answer any of those for you. Hope you have a great day, and thanks for watching. Bye.